Welcome back to the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling, and we're now going to turn our attention to Tuesday night's SmackDown with a SmackDown summary. Sean Meyers, as always, joined by broadcast colleague Sean Saputo here, courtesy of Skype. Sean, we highlighted Monday Night Raw and some storyline developments. Let's talk about SmackDown, and I think the biggest story over the last couple of weeks has been the trio of the New Day and how they continue to put on big-time matches, and you get the feeling that one of these guys, if not all of them, are really going to be elevated in the upcoming weeks and months. We know one of them is going to be in Money in the Bank. Not sure yet who. We have our ideas, but New Day, another main event and another victory, so they continue to shine on Tuesday nights.
Yeah, this is a group that, they've been doing it for a couple years now, and now, on top of all the great work they put in, they're putting in some more of their best work over the last, few weeks. And I just think it's coming to a point with this group where there is nothing left for them to do as a trio except, just continue to put on great matches and tag teams and just throw out fantastic bits backstage, things like that. But I really see something happening where one of whoever's in this Money in the Bank is going to get elevated, and it's getting to the point now where down the stretch I would love to see these three guys on singles runs, if not have one guy on a single run with the other two going after the tag titles, something like that, and then maybe pushing them into the mid-card status. But there's just something about this group that, and I think that's why WWE hasn't pulled the plug on them yet, is just because of how much revenue that this group generates. They're the best thing on SmackDown Live right now, and no matter what, you can always use these three together in some way, shape, or form.
So I mentioned they were victorious in the main event on SmackDown. They went against The Miz, Samoa Joe, and Rusev. So the other three individuals who will be in Money in the Bank representing SmackDown, as well as we mentioned one of the members of New Day. We were together earlier this week, Sean, and we both sort of agreed it has to be, you would figure, Big E. Although when you say that, because there's rumors that he's getting a push and everything, there's still an outside chance that the company throws a curveball at the last second, and I don't really see Woods being in this match, but I think Kofi Kingston has at least a shot. Do you have to, as a company, book Big E to be the participant in this match? When I asked Justin Lowry a couple weeks ago, he said he would not be disappointed necessarily if it was Kofi, but his choice was Big E. To me, I think I would be disappointed because I'm now expecting that E's going to get this big singles push that starts with this match.
I agree with you, simply because if they are looking to elevate someone, if not all, of the members of the New Day into singles routes while they're still together as a team, Kofi, and a lot of people would say this simply because of what he's done in past Money in the Banks, past like Royal Rumbles, things like that, they would sit there and think that they just put him in for the awe factor of what he can do on the ladder and do in matches of that caliber. If you put Big E in that match, a match that he is not familiar with, Big E, and people can sit there and go, wow, Big E's in this match. This could be the start of something big for, him. And WWE had failed attempts in the past of pushing Big E at a singles level. And now with all the fans behind them, Big E is the one that needs this more than Kofi does or Xavier Woods. Woods isn't quite ready yet to go on as a singles competitor in WWE, and Kofi had his shot back in, 2010 against Randy Orton, and it wasn't a huge success, but now he can have that success. But Big E's the one who has the ability on the mic. He has that, it factor right now, and I think Big E's the one you have to put in this match.
Do you think whoever it is, especially if it's Big E, that the member of the New Day in this Money in the Bank ladder match has a real shot at winning?
If it's Big E, I give it about a not taking it away from everybody else, but in terms of percentage chance to win, if they're in this match, I'd give Big E about a 70% chance over everybody else. I'd give Kofi about a 40, and Woods I would have at 0.
The guy that jumps out to me as maybe one of the favorites, especially when you're talking SmackDown, is Samoa Joe. And he was in this match, and of course his team with The Miz and Rusev sort of imploded. But when I look at Samoa Joe, I see a guy that's a main eventer and a champion waiting to happen. And I think generally the best way to go about the Money in the Bank briefcase is to have a heel have it. It just kind of it lends itself to a heel cash in opportunistically. We saw that on the women's side a couple months ago with Carmella. I think if you give it to someone like Kofi or Big E, massive boost to their career, but they're also faces, and it makes it sort of difficult. Although I will say those guys are so entertaining, they could probably do literally dozens of different skits just with having the briefcase that it could make for some entertaining TV. But when I'm talking favorites to maybe win this match, I don't think Braun Strowman will on Monday Night Raw. And then you look at the other guys on Raw, probably not going to be Finn Balor. I don't give Owens or Bobby Roode much of a chance. Miz has been there. Rusev, I don't know that they have a lot of long-term faith in him. So then you get down to maybe Big E. But I think that the safest and surest bet in this match for me is Samoa Joe. I know we'll get more into that next week when we preview, but I think he might be the guy that stands in the way of someone from the New Day.
See, here's the thing, though, about what you just said that I will disagree with. I get what you say about how, Samoa Joe's a main event caliber guy. He's destined to hold the title, and other guys in this match are main event caliber guys. The one thing I look at, though, is I don't think Samoa Joe needs to have the briefcase to go on to eventually win the championship.
I would agree with that.
He can do that without needing this briefcase going on and winning a title. The Miz, you can't see The Miz really. I mean, granted, his promo work is fantastic, but you can't see him going out and just winning it unless he has that opportunistic chance with the briefcase. Rusev, another guy, he's put in this match, but we have no idea what's going on with him in the company. There was that debacle about a month or so ago, so you can't see him winning. Now, on the flip side, Finn Balor, face, has the ability, has never gotten his chance back to win his Universal title. So does that put the briefcase in his hands? Kevin Owens, he can win it without it, but he has that niche as a character where a cash-in for him would be fitting.
Right.
Braun Strowman does not need a briefcase to win the World Championship. He can win that on his own any given night. And Bobby Roode, had he still been heel Bobby Roode, yes, perfect fit. Face Bobby Roode doesn't work.
So I think, if nothing else, by having both Raw and SmackDown represented in this Money in the Bank men's ladder match, it creates different scenarios and some unpredictability. It's not going to necessarily be easy to pick the winner. So I think that is one good aspect of the dual-branded show.
There's one thing I don't like about it, though.
What's that?
You can't cash in on either champion.
It has to be your own brand then.
I don't like that. If you're going to have an interpromotional match with one briefcase, 4 guys Raw, 4 guys SmackDown, why not make it where the contract is capable of being cashed in on either champion at any point in time?
I would agree. And even if they don't utilize that, even if they do stick with their own brand, it still creates that possibility. For instance, let's say someone from Raw, let's say Kevin Owens won it, okay? If I'm watching SmackDown and I see Samoa Joe beat down AJ Styles and leave AJ just in a basically a broken state in the middle of the ring, and then I hear Kevin Owens' music hit to come in, and that's instantly an incredible moment. And that's at least a possibility with what you said. That's not a possibility when you say it has to be on the show that you're on. So I would agree with you. I mean, I know that they want to try to keep Raw and SmackDown separate, but by making every pay-per-view dual branded, that leads to a ton of possibilities where they could do stuff like that with cash-in. So I agree. Maybe that's something that they can rethink in future years. Nonetheless, we're talking about cashing in on a champion. Well, who will be the champion representing SmackDown and the WWE title? Will it be AJ Styles? Will it be Nakamura? They are having their 5th and probably final match in their installment upcoming at Money in the Bank. And while I think most of what they've done has fallen short of expectations, starting back at WrestleMania with the Dream Match, I thought they did something very nicely on SmackDown with the contract signing. It was a little different than a typical contract signing. It did not take place in the middle of the ring. It did not lead to a table being broken like often is the case. But Paige overseeing the signing between AJ and Nakamura backstage, and some nice little interaction between the two, which really I think further solidified Nakamura's role as a heel, as sort of just an agitator, as a pest, and AJ Styles just getting frustrated and boiling over. I thought that they told a pretty simple story, but in this case I thought it worked with Nakamura doing his job, because remember, just go back 2 months, he was a very popular face, so they've made a pretty quick transition from him being a top face to a top heel, and I give him credit for doing his best to make it work. I know it's something that he had done in the past over in Japan. But Sean, I think that this nice little touch with the different feel to the contract signing, it wasn't the same predictable finish, but it sold the match a little bit to maybe people that were on the fence about seeing these guys go at it one more time.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool seeing, someone finally get under AJ Styles' skin. Because AJ's always been that calm, cool, relaxed guy. Especially as of late, and for Shinsuke to really get under him worked, and it drew my attention even more, because I'm excited for this match. Again, I told you this though, last man standing matches in this era are just so plain. You don't get the brutalness that you used to get back during the Attitude Era, but it was not only the fact that Shinsuke continued to grow as a heel, it was he adds that slight comedic relief as a heel too. Like when he grabbed the pen and he just looked at it and he goes, "It's out ink," or he grabs the other one and he goes, "It's broken," and just throwing it. It was funny, and then it got AJ to go out of his element, which I think was needed. And I think added the extra spark that we missed of the first few matchups with this. It's not going to be, granted, I'm going to say we get about 3 or 4 low blows in this match, just because that just seems to be the MO of this feud.
Yeah, that's what you're going to think back a year from now of this storyline. You're going to just think of Nakamura low blows, pretty much.
Yeah, but I really am excited for this match, and please, Lord, I'm just asking for one. Please, WWE gods, just let Shinsuke win the title, please.
I'm kind of thinking at this point AJ hangs on to the title, but I don't know. Again, I think this probably has to be the last match. If AJ wins, if Nakamura wins, then you figure you're going to get a rematch at least for AJ with his rematch clause. But we shall see. If nothing else, I give them credit after, again, I think a couple of disappointing matches. I think this segment in particular regenerated some of that original excitement that fans had going into WrestleMania. They tried something different, and in that case it worked on SmackDown, a different presentation, a different look. They sort of did the same with an interview segment with Big Cass. It was sort of an old school feel where they had the interview not in the ring, not backstage, but sort of offset to the side of the stage with Big Cass and with Renee Young. And they continue to put Big Cass in opportunities on the mic. They've given him plenty of scenarios in which he can show that he is capable of being a big-time player. And I'm not really buying it. I know that there's a lot of mixed opinions on this. I think a lot of fans are saying he's gotten a lot better. He's starting to finally convince them on the mic. I think for the most part he cuts good portions of his interviews and then sort of gets off track, and I don't really know from start to finish if it's linear. He kind of goes all over the place, and to me that's maybe something that he can improve on down the road, but I hear him saying stuff that I think, oh, that's pretty good, and then 30 seconds later he's saying something unrelated. It seems like the biggest takeaway so far is Big Cass is not happy with Daniel Bryan because he's little and Big Cass is big. That's pretty much the extent of it, and you don't really need anything real complicated, but I feel like you should sort of convey it a little bit better than that. Big Cass to me is a guy that ultimately he's going to be judged on if he can be a intimidating, physically dominant, assertive presence, not on his eloquent mic skills. But that is something that in 2018 you're going to need. What's your take on Big Cass on the mic and getting these weekly opportunities to try to put this feud over?
He needs to have the opportunity on the mic. I'll just put it that way. He needs to be on the mic talking and getting himself better. And I think he has done an alright job. I wouldn't say he has blown anybody out of the water and surprised them with how he's become, but he needs to be on the mic and he needs to get better, and he's getting better. The one thing, and I sit there when he is on his promos, and I wish it was this way, but we'll never get it. I really wish Enzo was his mouthpiece. That duo broke up way too quick. They never gave them the chance to succeed like they did in NXT. And I would have loved if that storyline, and Cass never would have gotten hurt, and he was in line for this big singles push, would have been he beats up Enzo so bad, Enzo realizes he can't do it on his own, and he needs Cass. And with Cass trying to hit superstardom, Enzo just took over as his mouthpiece.
Which, by the way, there's a lot of people petitioning to get Enzo back now that all of his legal issues have been basically proven false. He's been cleared of everything.
Video.
What's that?
Not after his rap music video.
I don't think he's going to be back anytime soon. I think that even before that, the company had a lot of issues with him. He seemed like sort of a pain in the neck. But you never know. I mean, I sort of agree. Whether it's Enzo or someone else, right now it seems like Big Cass would benefit from someone else helping him out along the way.
Even the irony of Carmella.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
granted, they're not together in real life anymore. It'd be a little awkward, but I mean, they're on the same show.
But isn't awkwardness sometimes lead to interesting television? I mean, that the whole you remember the whole Matt Hardy Lita Edge thing? That was almost uncomfortable at times, but everyone wanted to see what was going to happen, and you're thinking, is this going to slip into like real life for a second?
The whole thing was so real.
Right. So I don't think that's always a bad thing when you do stuff like that, when you sort of tie in real life to storylines. But ultimately, I guess it's going to go down to, can Big Cass deliver a good match against Daniel Bryan? Daniel Bryan had an awesome retort to Big Cass's interview. Unfortunately, like a lot of instances in WWE, some of the best work in terms of promos goes really unseen by the mass majority of people. It was, I believe, on like the WWE.com. You could check it out on Twitter. Look up Daniel Bryan's response to Big Cass's promo. It's pretty good. Certainly much better than what Big Cass brought to the table. But those two are going to have a match again. The second time around. First one, it was a pretty short, basic match. Daniel Bryan, easy victory. Got to figure Big Cass will have a better accounting. Do you see this as a make-or-break opportunity for him, this second match with Daniel Bryan?
I said that to you going into the feud, that this is a make-or-break feud for Big Cass, and if he doesn't mature on the mic and get better in the ring over time, it could be the beginning of the end of a short beginning to him as a singles competitor.
So Big Cass gets his opportunity on the mic. Shinsuke and AJ Styles have a nice backstage segment. But one thing that did take place in the ring, I think, was the reestablishing of Asuka as a dominant force on SmackDown. And this was much needed. She really had lost something after her defeat at WrestleMania to Charlotte, the near 3-year undefeated streak out the window. She comes over to SmackDown in a Superstar Shakeup, kind of gets off to a slow start. She loses some tag team matches, doesn't have really a big-time feud right off the bat. Was sort of lost in the shuffle, in my opinion. But now they decide to go with her as the challenger to Carmella after Carmella unbelievably was able to defeat Charlotte in their one-on-one match recently. So now it's Asuka's turn at the title. Really her first title opportunity. The cross-branded match at WrestleMania was a title opportunity, but now that she's battling week in and week out for a title on the show that she is regularly on, first time that we've seen that on the main roster for her. And her and Carmella are going to do battle. It seems like a mismatch on paper, but we'll see how they set it up. At least this week, they did a nice job of making Asuka seem like an unstoppable force again, because she had a handicap match against Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville, and she looked pretty dominant in it. She won the match, but they made it look at least realistic where they didn't bury Sonya or Mandy. But I think it was big for Asuka to kind of get back in the spotlight as this tremendous in-ring competitor on the women's side that could arguably be the best in the entire company.
Yeah, I think she is the best in the entire company. I'm sorry, but again, this match has no appeal to me. And as much as I want Asuka to win, and I hope Asuka wins, and I do like Carmella, though, on the mic at least. I think Carmella does a great job playing that heel role to as much of a potential as she can. It's just, I understand the whole Charlotte thing with the cash-in, but I will still never understand her beating Charlotte clean. I can't see any possible scenario in which Carmella comes out on top unless there is a disqualification. That is about the only two options I am okay with in this match is Asuka literally annihilates Carmella, or Carmella is just getting dominated and ends up winning via disqualification. Those are the only two I'm okay with. If Carmella ends up winning this match clean, Asuka's ruined.
I agree. I think that this is really, if she loses this match, again, if she loses, by count out or DQ or something bogus, so be it. If they really want to keep the title on Carmella for another month or so, they could go about it that way. Even if you get like a run-in from Mandy Rose, Sonya Deville, or from Peyton and Billy, I don't think you can have Carmella get a 1-2-3 or a submission, and I can't even imagine a submission against Asuka from Carmella. But if either of those happen, it's game over for Asuka, at least for the time being, and you might have a Bayley 2.0 where she's sort of ruined with no opportunity to redeem it down the road.
Yeah, this is one of those matches where Charlotte, alright, Charlotte had Carmella in her head, Carmella got in Charlotte's head, I get it, but you can't see this going any other way. And like we just said, it is terrible if Asuka ends up getting pinned clean in this match and Carmella wins. It ruins Asuka. I don't even think it builds Carmella's credibility, honestly.
I would sort of agree, because fans aren't going to buy it.
Exactly. The title has to change hands. I think that was the whole purpose. And I even said to you after Carmella beat Charlotte that she is not going to be some long-term champion. She is going to be a transitional champion. And I think that's the case. And that it's going to be Asuka wins this, and then whether in Extreme Rules or whatever they wrestle again, it's going to be Asuka beating her again.
Any concern or any issue with Mandy and Sonya losing a handicap match? I don't have it because I think that they booked it properly. It wasn't like they were both in there the whole time against Asuka. Asuka sort of took out Mandy, and then she had Sonya one-on-one and just won that. I thought they did a good job of not really ruining those two with very bright futures, because every now and then you can book a match where sort of everyone looks better in the long run, and I think maybe this was sort of an example of that. It was great for Asuka, and it wasn't at least damaging for the other two, who I think do really have a nice, bright future.
Yeah, it's not like Asuka went out there and just dismantled both of them and made them look like they have no in-ring ability whatsoever. I mean, I'm a fan of them. I'm not the biggest fan of Mandy Rose. I think she has work to do. I just think she has the look.
You're not a fan of her in-ring ability, I'm guessing, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But Sonya Deville, I think, honestly, is better than Mandy Rose.
I think Sonya is definitely a future champion.
I do too. I think out of the two of them, she's the future champion. I just think, and I mean, I read about it, I guess the whole Emelina thing got pulled because they felt Mandy Rose would play the character better. And I don't see it in the ring yet for Mandy Rose. And I think Sonya Deville has had the quickest growth out of all 5 that came up at that one point. I mean, Ruby Riott already was, very technical in ring. But out of the other 4 then, Liv, Sarah Logan, Mandy, and Sonya, I think Sonya's had the best growth over the last few months.
Well, and it's weird that you mention all of them, because the formula so many times in recent years has been someone's down in NXT, they become a star in NXT, they either win or contend for a title, then they probably have to kill a couple months until they have something for them on the main roster, and then they finally get the call up. With those 4, none of them were even really established in NXT. Liv Morgan was the only one that was really seen whatsoever. Sonya was just starting to get introduced. Mandy and Sarah Logan were almost never on TV. So they sort of went in a different approach with them. And it shows, right, yeah, Ruby was on there, of course, but I'm talking about the other 4 who really weren't. And it's sort of like, you can make it work in a number of different ways, and I think the ones that are truly talented, they do make it work, although I will give Sarah and Sonya and Mandy and Liv Morgan the benefit of the doubt if it takes them a little bit longer to develop that in-ring, because in years past and in examples past, those girls would still be in NXT working on that and just about now maybe getting the call up. But they've been on the main roster for, almost 6 months or so, if not even more than that. And for the most part, they haven't been exposed as not being ready, I would say.
And I think not having a couple of them down at NXT right now is hurting NXT.
Yeah, I think on the women's side, they sort of rush up. Truthfully, I thought that Carmella, Nia Jax, and Alexa Bliss all sort of came up early. And I thought that Alexa was ready, but she just didn't have a nice enough run in NXT. I didn't think Carmella or Nia Jax were ready either. They tend to seemingly bring up women before they're ready, whereas on the other side with men, they sort of take a little bit too long sometimes to get them up.
And that's what I mean, like with NXT right now. Can you name, not Shayna Baszler, Nikki Cross, or Kairi Sane, any other women on the NXT roster?
I mean, I can, but I would say most people. Lacey Evans.
Okay, 1.
Aaliyah.
Don't even know her full name.
Dakota Kai.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about Dakota Kai. That's 2 and a half, because you don't even know the one's other, like,
I think it's just Aaliyah, right? I think that's just her name.
All right, anybody else? Johnny Gargano's girlfriend does not count yet, or wife.
Candace, okay. Well, so you're exposing the fact that I'm like months behind on NXT, so that sort of hurts.
I can't even name them.
Dakota Kai has a sidekick now, right? That Nixon Knoll.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know. That's how depleted the NXT roster is on the women's side now. And that's where I look at it as I would love to see right now, like, still working on the in-ring, Sonya, Mandy, Sarah Logan, Liv Morgan down there, building themselves, and then coming up. I would have been okay with just, like, Ruby coming up, and then, you know, down the line, she brings in, like, Liv and Sarah Logan. And then Paige down the line have brought up Sonya and Mandy. I think it was too rushed, and I think it's harmed their growth in ring while getting the chances because they have to do it at a more main caliber level.
Right.
And I think it's depleted NXT's roster too quick.
And keep in mind, when you bring up 4 or 5 superstars, women, whatever, at the same time, they don't become special. They sort of just blend in together. When you bring up 1 or 2, it stands out. When you throw them all in there at the same time, people say, oh, what's the difference between Absolution and the Riot Squad? They're all just sort of generic to me. They all kind of look, you don't really separate yourself when you do that. So you hope that WWE learns lessons from stuff like this. We'll wait and see. Nonetheless, I think that there's plenty of talent on the women's side on the main roster, and hopefully they make the right decision in 8 days' time. Add Money in the Bank and have Asuka be the title holder for the SmackDown Women's Championship. Nonetheless, that's going to wrap up the SmackDown summary for this past week. We have one more segment to get to this week on the 5-Star Podcast, Wrestling for Trending Topics. We will talk about what superstars we would turn face to heel or heel to face and exactly how we would go about it. But that's going to do it for the SmackDown summary. For my colleague Sean Saputo, Sean Meyers signing off. Stick around. One more segment upcoming here on the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling.